Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark. And today I'm joined by guest Kristina Jareno. Did I say that right?
Almost Jareno. Very close.
Jareno. My apologies. So, Kristina, could you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi everyone. I am a mom. My daughter's 4. I'm born and raised in Long Beach, California. I am starting a homeschool co-op, and I am also an entertainer. So I make films and music, and I've reached out to John to help me regarding both of these industries and how to apply hourly billing to both.
Yes. Okay, great. So you sent an email. Thanks for that.
Mhm.
And you talked, let's focus on the schooling piece first, because I think I could be wrong, but I feel like that one has more moving parts. So why don't you give
Mhm.
folks a little bit of backstory on how you came to put that together and what need you feel like it's addressing or you want it to address?
Sure. So my daughter's 4. A couple years ago, around when she was 2, I started having the itch to really, quote unquote, get back to my career, or just have help with childcare so that I could have some me time as a
Hmm.
mom. So I started researching different daycares and preschools and schools, and that journey led me to tour over 25 to 30 schools in Los Angeles. And this was like Montessori, organic daycares, Waldorf, Reggio, progressive private schools like elementary on. And I didn't know what I was looking for at the time. I was looking for emotional safety. I was looking for I was also looking for parent education, and that journey led me to starting my own co-op. We'll be working with a RI associate and PET instructor to kind of help all the parents. And that's kind of how I ended up coming to starting it over at the end of this 2-year journey. Is really out of necessity, just because I couldn't find what I was looking for.
Okay, so
So
can you drill
yeah.
into those? You used two terms that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
Something RI associate and PET.
hmm so a RI associate, RI stands for Resources for Infant Educators, and I found out about Resources for Infant Educators actually from one of the co-ops that I was touring. And when I found them, my daughter was too young to enroll at the time, and I didn't want to wait a whole year to start getting, educated as a parent. The reason why I liked them was because they did like monthly workshops, and it was parent participation. So parents were really, really, really involved and given support and guidance, and that's what I was craving.
Hmm.
And so I asked them if there were any podcasts or resources or books, people to look out for, just to get started. And they recommended Janet Lansbury's podcast and Resources for Infant Educators, which I think is one of the kind of more becoming more mainstream approaches to respectful parenting. And then parent effectiveness training is also another approach that some RI associates recommend for after age 2, because Resources for Infant Educators is more for infants and up to age 2. So after age 2, when they start getting more conversational, they want uh, collaborative problem solving is more required, and like a conscious awareness of your abuse or lack of abuse of your authority and power is more required. So
Hmm.
PET is really, really great. It stands for Parent Effectiveness Training, and it was created by uh, Thomas Gordon, who's a psychologist that was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Wow.
So those two approaches were like the main things that I sunk my teeth into, in addition to self-directed education, which I think I saw in one of your videos. You're also a homeschooler.
Yeah, that's right.
Are you a
Hmm.
homeschooling parent?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
okay. So now you weren't finding what you were looking for, so you decided to take a leadership role and put something together.
hmm
And you said it was a co-op. So can you kind of,
hmm
that's all a black box to me. So can you
Yeah.
kind of describe what that structure means? I mean, I have a vague understanding of what a co-op like food market is, but like what's the structure if you could just make it kind of more tangible for me.
Yeah. Well, from what I know from the preschools that I've toured, and I've toured a few different co-ops here in LA. It's basically parents. It's like a preschool where parents can volunteer in the classroom to be more involved and kind of witness what their child is being exposed to, from the education standpoint to the people teaching them to the other families that are involved and their children. So it's basically parents coming together. Usually the premise of it is if parents are volunteering, then there's more resources in the classroom. And that means that your tuition is going to be, I don't know, cheaper. Although I found that some parent participation co-ops and preschools, they can, even if they're both high end, or depending on what their product is or what, education being the product, the quality of the education or the environment they're providing, it could be like the same price anyway. So, but it's basically parents coming together as a village and collaborating with each other, arranging for childcare with a lead teacher, like a director and other lead teachers.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That clicks with me, because there are homeschool organizations around here that have a similar sort of thing. Like it's kind of like volunteer to teach. Oh, you know how to play violin? Could you teach a violin class? Kind of stuff. For not for preschoolers, but so sort of similar. I sort of get the idea. And then it's a question of I'm kind of stuck at the beginning where you were like, I was looking, this small child, and I'm looking for some me time, but now you're gonna be with the kid, all the kids anyway. Is this really for for parents who don't work, or what's the is it?
So the structure of what the unicorn is thing that I'm creating. Yeah, I can go straight into it.
Yes.
Well, the reason why I'm creating this thing, and it's like a preschool co-op, except that when any of the children turn age 6, all they have to do is file a PSA, and then which is the private school affidavit, and that's for you to legally become like an unschooler, I should say, or like a homeschooler if you want more control. Because if you don't have a PSA and you're a homeschooler, then that means that you're going to adhere to the state mandated curriculum through a charter like iLead or Inspire or whatever.
Yeah, I believe that's different from state to state, but that's how it is there.
Yeah, sorry, in California here, that's how it is. So it's kind of like world schooling or unschooling together type of thing. And
Gotcha.
It's really attachment based, because my concern as a parent was that I was going to enroll my child, and then because I've done a lot of kind of trauma work and therapy on myself, and that meant that I was like really conscious of attachment theory and attachment styles even. So I had a concern that my child was going to make all of these attachments to a space, to primary attachment caregivers, which are the other head teachers or the other parents, and then the friends, and then it's kindergarten time, and then you have to break all of that, and then you have to break all of it each year, because that's kind of how the structure of the school is. You don't have like the same teacher each time. Waldorf is a little bit different. Waldorf is like one teacher for like first grade to eighth, I think, which is really cool. But I had a concern about that, and then I also had a concern because I didn't want to have to deal with the dysfunction that comes with even in a co-op setting, where parents of different commitments and different parenting styles and different desires, like not every parent is gonna, want to look at their stuff, even if they say they do. Not every parent is gonna want to study or take class with something like resources for infant educators or parent effectiveness training to actually get some in the field skills of how to deal with your child and how to negotiate and how to deal with conflicts
Mm-hmm.
and different things. So I didn't want to deal with the dysfunction that comes along with me not owning that business and the directors deciding, well, I mean, I'm okay with stomaching that because I have a business to run and I'm licensed for this many kids and I have to survive. You know, I have to make a profit with this business. So with this family, I'm willing to bring that in. But then what does that do with my child and myself? Like my child's just going to be a sitting duck because I'm the one I don't want to be arrogant or anything, but like say I'm a parent, like let's just say if I was a parent that was like one of the or the most anal and neurotic about
Okay. Yeah.
psychological health and emotional safety, that automatically means that my child is going to be less prone to certain dysfunctional behaviors than other children.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's on a spectrum. I'm not perfect at all, but I'm saying that it's just different when I'm hanging out with, like, let's say other parents from my classes, and it's all, there's like a collaboration together. It's like, I have a trust with you that if something comes up, I don't have to worry about what you're going to say to my child because we're on the same page about the detriments of A, B, and C and
Right. Okay.
how to
So
practically handle it.
yeah, yeah. So
So,
basically, you wanted to
yeah.
make sure that anybody who was, I guess it's not teachers, it's not, but the adults in the room are basically all on the same page, right? So
Yeah.
that you all kind of have the same worldview about this educational situation. I don't even know what to call it exactly, but you have about how the children would be treated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So all right, well that makes
And
perfect sense. I mean, regardless of where you put yourself on the spectrum, you know, if you're like the most hands-off person ever and it's just like you figure it out, kid, or you know, the other end of that spectrum, whether the dear listener agrees with either approach is irrelevant. The
yeah.
point is that your goal is to have a bunch of adults interacting with the kids in a particular way. So fine, whatever that
Yeah.
way is, that's perfectly reasonable. Okay, so is this where are we in the phase here? Are you is it actually started or is this still an idea? Oh, it's not clear to me if you know, you've already
Sure.
launched or
So I've tried to launch it a couple times, in that just kind of posting on different Facebook groups to gain interest on like kind of a beta testing, like would someone be interested in this kind of thing?
mm-hmm,
The link that I sent you, it's to a Wonder School listing. Wonder School is a really cool organization, platform that they help people launch micro schools and preschools, nature-based programs, whatever.
yeah, it looked like Meetup for Kids. Kind
Yeah.
okay.
So I basically, what I've done so far is just to create the relationships and the alliances. So what I've done is to make like the structure of it, like where it would be located, how many times it would meet, what would be required of parents,
Mm-hmm,
who right now I've been doing interviews with who would be the lead facilitator. I, of
mm-hmm,
course, would be the program director, and who would be the village. I call it the village mentor. It's basically the person that's going to be guiding, the expert, I guess, the person that's going to be guiding the entire village of parents and having bi-monthly conferences with everyone.
mm-hmm,
So I've
okay.
created all of those alliances and just materialized it in what you see. And the only thing that is holding me back from doing pre-enrollments right now is just finalizing the budget, finalizing what I'm going to offer for
Mm-hmm,
the educator, which is why I reached out.
mm-hmm.
And then securing I have a few candidates or a couple candidates right now, and just deciding upon the person that I'm going to go to. And then I'll be doing licensing and all that stuff with the,
Okay. Yep. All right. So there's so many factors here. So, what is there a facility? I don't think you mentioned a facility, or
it's
is this
home
going to
based.
be
Yeah, it's based out of my house.
okay? So, all right, perfect. Because my next question was going to be capacity. So, what do you imagine is the capacity, at least in this first iteration, in terms of number of families or individuals?
A small childcare. So I can only get approved for a small childcare license versus a large one. So a small one is up to 8 children.
Mm-hmm.
Large one is, I think, 12 to 14.
Okay. All right.
It's like you
So,
get to almost double, I think.
okay. Um, so 8 children, and would it be, like I live behind a Montessori school, and they seem to have two shifts.
Yeah.
There's like a morning shift and an afternoon shift, and the morning shift is the littler kids. I'm gonna guess they're about 4 or 5, just from looking at it, just
Mhm.
from seeing them, and then the older kids are maybe 6, 7, 8 ish,
Mhm.
6 or 7 ish.
Mhm.
Would that be this? I don't imagine that this age group would be a full day thing, right? Or is it?
No, well, that's the thing is because um, I'm wanting it to be for parents that want to be more involved or are already homeschoolers. So it would be a 3 day a week thing for a part-time.
Right.
Um, so it's like, yeah, you're exactly right. Age 2 to 6 or 2 to 7. And it would be mixed age. And Monday, Wednesday, Friday for like 4 hours would be the group time. Something unicorn like that I've created is to budget into the scheduled primary attachment building, which is basically one on one time with the lead teacher, to have one on one time with each child. So, um, like, kind of in the home for 4 hours. It's kind of like a nanny preschool co op hybrid,
Hmm.
because what I found was if the teacher is just, there's not, if the teacher is just in the group setting, you don't really get to know each child.
Hmm.
And especially get to know, like, okay, if you have some sort of behavioral thing, I don't want to, be extreme and call it dysfunction, but let's say like some sort of challenge that you're having with a
Hmm.
child or multiple children in the classroom. And if you can only, like, you can't really stop it if you don't get to the root of, like, are they getting their needs met at home, or like what is the behavior like. You can't really get intimate or really connected with that. So that's why I've built that in, is just to prepare my bases for that kind of challenge, but also for the child's sake, because many families want to just hire a private nanny because they want that primary attachment, they want that kind of long term, um, uh, they want that long term relationship.
Right.
But at the same time, it doesn't take care of the need of, how am I going to get my child to have safe friendships with other parents that I trust as well? Like, how are we going to have support? Otherwise,
Right.
I'm just dealing with it all the time.
Right. Okay. So,
So,
so when you say the primary teacher would have one-on-one time with the kids, you're talking about the
mhm.
primary teacher going to their house.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I've basically created a full-time schedule for a teacher, like a 40-hour type
Hmm.
of. So basically, I cut it down to 6 kids, each having a 4 hour block with that teacher, and then a 4 hour block 3 times a week in a group setting. And then each of the 6 families get a 30-minute conference with that lead facilitator to discuss the week, to discuss what's going on with their kid, what they're pissed off about with other kids, or
Hmm.
whatever can be resolved, and whatever cannot be resolved with that lead facilitator would then go on to be addressed in a bi-monthly conference with the RI associate and PET instructor.
Hmm.
So that's kind of how it is.
Okay. So in the primary teacher, there's,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the word primary means one, but is
Mm-hmm.
there just one, or is it one per child? Or is it like one for the whole
It's
school?
yeah, one for the whole school. I call it a lead facilitator. So it's basically the person that is the one objective party who is not a parent of anyone, and their
Hmm.
job is basically to model the skills. They're going to be more trained in RI and PET, or more
Okay.
proficient in them than so when the parents are volunteering, they're kind of practicing with that person.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. And you
Mm-hmm.
say that at the end of the day, that works out to about a full-time schedule for that person between
Yeah.
the group and the individual. Okay.
Exactly.
All
Yeah.
right. And that person is not one of the parents, so that person is clearly a fully paid position.
Yes.
And did you say you were licensed for 8 kids, but you're only going to do the schedule
Yeah.
only allows for 6?
The schedule I've created worked out for 6, and the reason for that was because I was concerned about COVID. I mean, obviously, I can make more profit if I can put 2 more kids in there, and I would simply just add, I would either cut everyone's one-on-one time to 3 hours to fit them in, or I would just add on a Saturday if the person is wanting to work from Monday to Saturday. The challenge I got was because I found a candidate that I really liked and originally told me they wanted a full-time position. And then they told me, well, I should have said full-time income. I would like to be able to work three days a week and work 12 hours versus 40. And I'm like,
I
okay.
see.
And in addition to that, I don't know how much longer I want to do this. I read 4-hour work week and I want to be independently wealthy. I'm sure, so the question of
Weird.
how is the ceiling going to be broken as far as is the raise, is it going to, that question is, I feel is always going to be a concern if I'm working within this hourly structure, because I don't think anyone wants to work for like 30 or 40 an hour for the rest of their lives and working 40 hours a week for like 3 decades. I don't think,
Yeah.
so that's why I'm like, should I hire 2 primary educators or lead facilitators and then say, hey, you're both only going to work part-time and this is why. The other 20 hours, like if you want, I'll set you guys up, all of us meaning just 3 people, as kind of more consultancy, so that you can spend 20 hours that you can't not do the in-person part. But if you want to work, an extra day, and do you know what I mean? Trying to create a different type of, yeah.
Right, so that there's incentives and all of that. So at this level, so with the small license, and if you're doing, let's just say 6 or 8 kids around there,
Yeah.
you think you could theoretically handle it with 3 employees, so 3 people who aren't parents of the kids in the program, plus some parental volunteering. Assuming, let's say 3 equivalent of 3 full-time people, right? So even maybe it's 6
no.
part-time
It would be 3. It would be 3 part-time or 2 like full-time.
Okay. So, and you being one of the full-time.
Yes, even though like that's only like my goal is to be a little bit more hands-off eventually. But
Okay.
it's so ironic, right? I wanted help with childcare and then I'm starting this thing and then I'm going to be like more involved. But I honestly think if I set it up, I could be having more and more time to myself, because it's literally, if I don't make this, then it's like I'll have time to myself, but I'm going to be in anxiety all the time, like trying to stomach what's happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm creating this so I can be hands off a little bit more and
Well,
relax.
Yeah. Well, that's it is funny. But what you got here is an interesting structure. So you've created a structure, and you've got a really strong worldview. And if you can find, let's say each family only has 1 child that would be in this program. If you can find 6 families that agree with this worldview and they want to be in this tribe, they want you to sort of lead them in this portion of their lives, their children's early education. Let's just assume for the time being you can find 6 families like that. And then let's just assume you can find the lead facilitators that kind of have their hearts in the right place. Like they actually want to do this, because this is not a great way to make $1 million. If you're, they could go work at a Starbucks and not have to think about anything. So of course you're going to, and I know obviously people that do have their heart in the right place exist. So let's just say you can find them and, they're not like giant Tim Ferriss fans. And they want to do
Well, that's
this.
the thing,
Like,
is that if my heart is in the right place, am I that's why I'm like, can I create something for someone to take this journey on with me and still be a Tom Ferris fan? Like, 20 hours a week, you're with these children. The other 20 hours, we can build your wealth and record all the bi-monthly conferences and the weekly conferences that they do with the families, because they're going to be providing value during those conferences each week. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, I get it. I just feel like there are
Sorry.
much easier ways to have a 4-hour work week than something like this. This is extremely
Yes.
complicated. Uh, it is. It's extremely complicated. You could sell vitamins online and have more luck, or not more luck necessarily, but it would be a lot less to worry about.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to decide, is this really what's the competing goal? Like, are you more, and I don't mean you, I mean in general. So like
Yeah.
when one is deciding to start a business,
Yeah.
what you need to understand the motivations, like if your motivations. So like
Hmm.
what's the mission, or what's the vision? Is the mission to revolutionize the way that young children get their sort of first taste of education, or is there a bigger picture mission, or is it a little bit more income focused or lifestyle focused, which is totally fine. If you want to have a lifestyle business, or you want to maybe even something bigger than a lifestyle business, that's fine as long as you know that. But those two things do not necessarily overlap, because
Hmm.
the path of doing a really complicated business I keep saying complicated. It's complicated in the sense that you have to get an enormous amount of buy-in from a decent sized group of people.
Yeah.
So, starting off with it's just a very specific kind of parent. It's a very
Hmm.
specific kind of employee. Um, yeah, and I could just, there are easier ways to make money online, that would afford you probably just as much money, but let's talk about money next. So let's say
Okay.
that you are on a mission,
Hmm.
and the desire to create a new, the unicorn school, call it, this new
Hmm.
structure that is fundamentally different from anything else that's out there. It's for a very specific kind of parent. There's not
Yeah.
there's not millions of them, but there might be hundreds of thousands of them
Yeah.
who want to have this kind of experience. Okay, that's a big market, big enough market.
Yeah.
Um, the how From the employee standpoint, what I'm wrestling with is which motivations, which incentives are going to be the most effective. So let's just start with the easy one. Let's
Hmm.
say that in order to get people that you trust that are going to stick around, you need to pay them $200,000 a year. So you've got you and one lead facilitator. So right off the bat, you need, basically, call it $500,000 a year, fully loaded costs. So you're paying like whatever you're paying for, at least FICA, and 500 grand. Okay, so that's basically 100 grand per family, roughly a little bit less than 100 grand per family. Is Do you think that the money would motivate the right person? So this lead facilitator, do you think the money would motivate that person to actually be good and stay good at their job and stay with you? Or do you think that there needs to be something else? They need to, like, is there some other motivation that, like, the money wouldn't cut it? Or do you think the money would cut it?
Um, I think it's both, because right now I'm working in the childcare industry paradigm, which is nannies. The cheapest nanny is going to go for 15. The most expensive one
Go
is
for
going to
15
go
what?
15 an hour. That was just like the cheapest teacher or nanny is going to go for that low. And then for the most skilled, rye trained person is going to go between 40 and 60 an hour. So the candidate that I've got is trying to negotiate, like 100, in the low one, like 100,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I offered that, if I could find a way, if I could offer that, that the concern with that particular person was them wanting that kind of income and wanting to only work 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And and like not wanting to do this forever or wanting to be able to like become independently wealthy. So it's either an incompatibility with that person,
Yeah.
or it's something that I'm going to have to address with anyone that comes in. It's like everybody wants to be able to work less. So if I'm offering something of, hey, if you're only on the field physically 20 hours and the other 20 hours, I could help you create other things.
Well, lots of
That's kind
people
of what I
work
thought.
full time. Like lots of people work full time. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be able to find someone who's not averse to working full time.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and if you're offering $250,000 in salary, you could probably find someone who used to run a school or was a principal or something that is certified in all the things that you want, and they're a lifelong educator, and they aren't looking to spend less time with kids. They're looking to spend more time with kids.
That's true.
Right. So I'm sure that person exists
Yeah.
at that salary.
Yeah.
So, I don't think the salary alone is gonna make anybody. I mean, I can guarantee like that money wouldn't make me want to do it. Like it's not my calling to spend
Yeah.
my day with, whatever, 6 kids and honestly, driving around to their houses doesn't interest me either. It doesn't matter. You could pay me $1 million, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So the money's not going to it's not going to be the only solution. You still need the right person, but if your salary was in that range, you'd have an entirely different pool of people to choose from.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't be, perhaps they're later in life and they're looking for, reconnecting with their original experience of being an early education kindergarten teacher or whatever. And maybe they're looking at retirement, but they've still got like 5 good years. Whatever. I'm sure the person exists if the salary is up in adult territory. Adult professional territory, I should say. I mean, plenty of adults don't make $250,000 a year, but if the salary is up there, you're going to have an entirely different group of people who are interested in talking.
That's
if you're
true.
so if you're talking to a bunch of people who are currently consider themselves like gig workers and they're nannying on the side, that to me sounds like who you're talking to now, is someone who kind of sees it as a side hustle or something to make ends meet while they figure out their online empire.
Uh,
And they're
well,
just
no, the one particular person I worked with has worked in early childhood education, and she was a nanny for high net worth families.
Mhm.
And so she's like tasted both of what it's like to be flown out on private jets, like just to nanny for a weekend for this, family, or, working in a preschool. And what interested her with, what I was creating was basically, obviously the structure I've created cuts down on the dysfunction. It positions her as a collaborator or as a partner instead of like hands,
an
as you would
employee.
call it, to
Right.
where it's like, you're my nanny, I'm going to tell you how to nanny my child. It's like, no, I want the lead facilitator to be so proficient in these skills that they model what you're kind of like a TA, or like helping to guide the parents.
Yeah, like super nanny, like you're
Like hold
parenting
them.
wrong.
Well, I want parents who want guidance.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said before, I don't think, I think it's the segment of the population that A, wants to parent in this way, B, has a child in this age range, and C, has the amount of money that they're going to have to pay to do something like this. It's probably pretty small, but it's way more than 6. So,
Yeah, it is.
right. So it's just a question of finding those people. And if you're on this mission, it would be, I think, well, they're also located to, it's also not remote. So it's going to be located to your geography. But, that's actually a plus and minus, because if you're active in your community, then people are going to know about it, and you're automatically, word is going to spread to your demo, your demographic. All
Mhm.
right. So let's talk about. I mean, the conversation, the email conversation originally started around value pricing.
Yeah.
So this doesn't really strike me as an opportunity for value pricing in the narrowly defined way that I think about it. So, in my definition is a little bit more narrow than the general description. So for me, value pricing is the perfect fit for a project kind of work.
Yeah.
And you could see this as a, you could kind of see the, age 2.5 to 6, you could see that as a, like a 3.5 year project, but it doesn't, that would really be trying to shoehorn the concept in where it doesn't belong.
Yeah.
This feels more like a subscription model. It's not a subscription, but it's more like a subscription model.
Hmm.
And people like Ron Baker would say that subscription models are like value pricing 3.0 or 2.0, whatever he says. It's
Hmm.
in a sense you can value price it technically, but the mechanics of setting the price are completely different than the mechanics of setting the price, a value price for a project. Because with a project, a client comes along, or a buyer or a parent in this case, and they've got a project for you. It has a desired end state. There's a desired outcome. There's a transformation that takes place in their life that is the metric for success.
Hmm.
So in this case, it could, just this is really stretching it, and this could potentially be something that's impossible to commit to anyway. But let's say someone's got a child with a really bad behavior, really intense behavioral issues that are causing them to act out in ways that are not socially acceptable. And the project is make that stop happening, you know. And you could say, okay, this is a really bad example of value pricing
Yeah.
because it's B2C, but you could put a price on that. Like the parent, not you, but the parent could put a price on that. There's an amount of money that they'd be willing to spend to improve this condition. So, and it's going to depend on how much money they have, their buying power. It's going to depend on how severe the situation is, how much pain they're in. And it's going to depend on who they perceive to be the alternatives to hiring you, or what they perceive to be the alternatives to hiring you. So those three factors, the max price formula factors, crop up when you're doing a value pricing engagement. So let's do a little bit less sensitive one. Let's say someone came to you and said, "Hey, we want you to design a school for us. I want you to design a curriculum or put together a structure for us." And you'd say, "Okay, how would you measure the success? How would you know if I hit a home run? How would you know if I totally failed and it just blew up in our faces?" And you would talk with a specific potential buyer, get a sense of what the outcome is worth to them, and you would come up with ways that you could help them get closer to that goal at different price points, and then they could pick a price. So the mechanics of value pricing, to me that's value pricing the way I talk about it. When you're value pricing a group, the mechanics are completely different. So I don't even use the same term, even though technically, value always comes into a buying decision. I wouldn't talk about it like value pricing. What I would do is treat it more like a subscription-based productized service that has a number of components. Because first, it's got a dollar amount that would be attached to it. Let's say it's $100,000 a year, and plus there's a time commitment. The parent needs to volunteer for X number of sessions. I'm sure they have to go through an approval process. Like I assume that they would have to apply, and you'd meet with them and all of that.
There's only once a month that they'd have to volunteer.
Only once a month. They'd
Yeah.
what?
It's only once a month that they would one
Oh,
parent would have to
volunteer.
volunteer. Yeah.
Okay. But would there be an application process? Like, would you interview them before accepting them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd
Okay.
have to see if
If they're on the same page, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So that's not, once a month. That's not a huge commitment, but for someone who has a full-time job, that's problematic. So not everyone's going to want to do that. It's part of the payment, air quotes, part of
Yeah.
their shared accountability, or their shared responsibility. So there's that, and then they need to be presumably, if the lead facilitator is going to be modeling behavior in the home, then the parent needs to be present for that, right? So it's not like a babysitter's there and they can just go do the shopping.
Well, initially, yes. Eventually, they could view it as an opportunity for like, mother's helper type thing,
Okay.
meaning that they're there to help and they can be at the house or they cannot be. In the initial stages, because we're all, mastering these things, the first 10 weeks of enrollment will include a weekly class so that
Hmm.
everybody understands like the terminology and the things that we're doing, the practical things.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
got so yeah, so let's move into differentiators. So when parents who might be parents for you, so like parents that are kind of candidates to be your, what do you call them? Clients?
Yeah, I don't
Doesn't
know,
sound
village
right.
members.
Oh, right. Your villagers. All right.
Yeah.
So let's say, Alice and Bob are potential villagers.
Hmm.
What else are they looking at? When they're looking like, oh, this unicorn school, it's like, it's 100 grand. It's very interesting. It's got all these different components, and we support the mission that's on the website here. What are the other things they're considering?
They're probably going to consider full-time care at that price. If someone's paying 60 an hour for 40 hours a week, that's like 115 grand for a private nanny to be there full time for their kids. That's the alternative. It's like you
Private,
could do
okay,
that.
private nanny is about 150 a year,
115.
15.
Yeah.
All right, so you're cheaper than a private nanny. Plus, you're educating
Hmm.
the parents. Plus,
Yeah. The
you're
thing that the thing that I can't do is I can't like I can't compete with the time that a private nanny is going to provide. The private nanny is going to provide 40 plus hours a week at that price point,
mhm.
and I'm not providing that because I don't particularly think it's like I'm trying to make it's more for families who spend more time with their children and they kind of don't want to be full time with their children all the time or are unable to arrange free childcare with relatives or whoever, um,
Okay,
so that they
so
can get time to themselves. It's a part time structure. Each child is not going to get full time like ever from this structure.
okay,
Yeah.
a full-time private nanny is probably not a fair comparison then, because the villagers don't want that anyway.
Okay.
Maybe a
Yeah.
part-time one.
A part time one at that price point would, then it would be less than that. It would be 60 to 80 grand a year
Okay.
for a part-time private nanny. Um, you could also look at, like, I've done market research for competitors, like other part-time RIE inspired programs,
Hmm.
in LA, and they go for full-time for that program is going to be 2,200 a month at most.
Hmm.
And then for part-time then would be in the 1,500 mark per month. So that's originally what I was pricing it at. I was originally pricing it to be competitive with, what else is comparable, which is a part-time preschool program that is RIE inspired. It doesn't have the parent education aspect.
Right. Exactly.
So
So if and what else is different
the
between the
private,
part-time? Yeah, the
well,
part-time.
it's impossible not to transform as a parent in this structure because there's no way that you can be, because there's feedback loops every week.
Hmm.
It's usually a parent is going to want this if they actually want to do parenting well versus to just get help with childcare with someone who's the best of the best.
Hmm.
Like,
So
they're two different things.
right, that's what I'm getting at. So what are the
Yeah.
other things that make it different? Is there, so like the parent thing, it's kind of like I could see the tagline like be the parent your kids actually want kind of thing.
Well,
It's
they
more,
need
yeah, it's more, I feel like it's more about the parent almost than the kids, because so
it.
let's drill into the kids. How different is the experience for the child between what you would offer and what a normal RIE inspired part-time preschool experience, or like the Montessori school behind my house?
Well, first off, it's going to be different because the children are going to, this is like the whole soapbox education like thing about the children are going to be a lot more self-aware. They're going to be a lot more they're going to have safer relationships. So if you don't want, if you want to be someone who wants to save in therapy for when your child is a teenager or an adult, you know, it's not save a fortune, but like I feel like there's this movement where people are starting to understand that in addition or instead of a college fund, you're going to need a therapy fund.
Good Lord.
You know, because like honestly, like me, if I look back on my own childhood, my own teens, my own therapy that I paid for as a young adult, that I didn't invest, that I could have invested in my own business or self-development in my college years and after college years, that's like thousands of dollars that and pain, you cannot get that time back. You cannot get that life back. Like as someone who has survived suicidal depression and someone who has survived self-harm and all of these mental health things, you cannot put a price tag on the absence of that. It's like, it's, you know, and a lot of it comes down to, when it comes to addiction and mental health and all of these things, it comes down to attachment. I've, you know, I've had sessions with the pioneering psychologists, you know, and it does come down to how healthy were your attachments? What was the level? There's a metric. How can you measure emotional safety in the home or psychological safety in the home? How can you measure emotional neglect? There are things that but they're defined by the DSM of what defines emotional neglect, defines emotional abuse. And this structure is meant to decrease that emotional and psychological harm in the classroom and out of it. Because even if you did it in the classroom, you cannot you're just putting a Band-Aid on it if you're not addressing it's a wasted effort to manage stuff that should be eliminated in the home.
Okay, so that was
inefficient.
So that was a powerful sort of mission statement there, like narrative about, and it also indicates to me who your target market probably is. So people who have had experiences like yours, who now have kids and don't want their kids to have that same experience, but aren't equipped to do anything about it because of the behavior, let's say their parents or teachers modeled to them. They don't know another way. They just know the outcome is not good. So for someone like that's been through years of therapy and had some scary stuff going on, then they might be, it seems like those are people who would just be all over this, honestly. Yeah. Very excited about this idea. So there's really there's no comparison. Therefore, you shouldn't be modeling your prices on something that is apples to oranges. So it's also very interesting to me to consider the idea of pricing this annually instead of monthly.
They do that. They do that on some school pages where they price it at a yearly tuition versus
yeah, I mean, the private schools around us, which are not the same thing, but the private schools around here, you don't pay by the month. It's an annual tuition, and it's a lot. So and the schools have waiting lists. So there are people that have a lot of money that will pay for this sort of thing. I mean, like the kindergarten down the street from our house is $35,000 a year for like a generic kindergarten.
It's just really funny because you're going to pay $35,000 a year, and I guarantee you, therapists, that model with therapy, you're going to be having 200 to 300 an hour each week for a number of months. It's still a price tag on that, so it's funny.
Well, I think that's all, that speaks to the rational mind a little bit, but it's also in the distant future. So I think the more powerful angle is what you were saying about like that pain. You don't get that back. Like that doesn't get erased. You don't get that time back. there's a money component too, but that's nothing compared to the
Mm,
the struggle, you know,
yeah.
like the especially talking to a parent that like wouldn't that has had bad experiences and is afraid that they're going to do the same thing, you know. So for that person, and if you know if this is a private jet kind of person, I don't think I don't think mid to high five figures or low six figures is out of the question, because it's not the same thing. It's almost like it's more like parent training with some daycare associated with it. That's how it feels.
Yeah, it's like parent training with an on the field component, because as much like, let's say if I created a digital product or like a workshop or like some sort of consultancy where parents could pick my brain every month,
Hmm.
it's not going to make them it's not going to make a difference if they don't practice it on the field. So what I'm providing is a structure where if they're located close to me, they could practice these things.
Yeah, it's like parenting
And
lab.
yeah, because because I
It's
you can read a book all day long. It doesn't mean you're gonna know how to like be a master at basketball.
Of course, but the book's only $10, and going to
Yeah,
not
yeah,
everybody can afford $100,000 a year for Parent Lab.
yeah,
So for the people who can't, then remote assistance or a book or a course or something is,
yeah.
if that's the most they can afford, that's the most they can afford. Okay, so this a lot of the, I think a lot of the I think your differentiator, it seems really large. It seems really large. I don't know if there are other alternatives that you would list to something like this. I've never heard of anything, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I am kind of somewhat in the demo because we're homeschoolers. So it's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like uh, we, it would be good to have, I mean, it would be good to have more group experiences with the kids, particularly my older one. He really likes being around lots of kids. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we had that, but not with the pandemic now. It's been not so much. So, but I can imagine someone who normally doesn't have some kind of regular structure for their kids to be socialized with other kids, especially if they enjoy that. And this is an interesting, it's an interesting pitch to people who I really think yeah, I think that's a strong angle. So since it's located, since it's regional, so they have to be people near you. A contributing factor to your success, or at least the prices that you can charge, is going to have everything to do with how much wealth there is in your area, and like what the buying power is for people who are within a reasonable driving distance from your location. So, assuming that you've got rich people nearby, then you could probably, well, I mean, that's what it is. Like, if you have
Yeah.
rich people nearby, then you could, I mean, you could charge a lot more than $1,500 a month. Let's put it that way. I
This
feel,
would, it's like, there's different price points to this. So if I was creating if I was creating, like, let's say six families in Beverly Hills, Bel Air, and Brentwood, those are the
mhm,
premier type of neighborhoods near me.
yep,
Six families who are all high net worth, but they are wanting to lessen the dysfunction inside their home and
hmm,
with they want, you don't make that type of wealth if you're not wanting your kid to like have a happy, you know,
hmm,
different life. Um,
yeah,
so it's part-time anyway because of that structure. You want to be able to have them do what they want to do within a day instead of be in a facility forced to
hmm,
do whatever for 8 hours a day.
hmm, hmm,
So I could do that there. Where I'm located, where me and my daughter are in Long Beach. So that's why the 1,500 a month price point is kind of, unless I'm going to downtown Long Beach. But another question is like to create this model that also allows for diversity,
hmm,
you know? So because of the in-person component, I can, anyway, that's something to chew on. But
yeah,
what I've been playing with is this in-person thing. and then as well as the digital things. So like creating virtual co-ops where, kids are relating virtually and parents are participating virtually is
Hmm.
like another thing, especially with the pandemic going on.
Right.
But
Yeah. So, like from a product ladder standpoint, that makes a lot of sense to me. It removes the geographic restriction, and you could have something farther down the pricing ladder. You could sell the model. You could say, "Here's the model. You need this kind of person. You need two people like this. They need to have these certifications. Here's how you run." Once you have your proof of concept up and running, and you have like glowing testimonials and successful kids and parents, you could
mhm.
say, "Hey, here's this model," and you can buy it to run a unicorn school near you, almost like a franchise type of thing. Where
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and then there's your 4-hour work week. So
Oh, cool.
you need
Cool.
to.
Yay.
So I
Got a
obviously.
4 week work. I got a 4 hour work week out of this conversation.
Yeah, all you have to do is prove the model and be like wildly
Yeah.
successful first. So okay, so it's an interesting concept. You've got strong differentiators. There's probably a high desire among the tribe of right people, the villagers that you're looking for. There's going to be a high desire. So the factor that is unknown is the the buying power. So that's going to be the limiting factor, I think, on the price ceiling. And I like this. We live near a couple of really expensive private schools, and they have, speaking to the diversity thing, they've got scholarships and they have
Oh,
endowments.
okay.
So theoretically, you could, do almost like an affirmative action kind of thing. I don't actually know what I'm talking about, but but I know like Harvard and expensive higher education institutions have sort of a weighted scale for, who gets admitted and how much financial aid they get. So you could imagine having a
Hmm.
really high price tag, and for people who, don't qualify for financial aid, they pay that really high price tag, and that helps fund some of the people who can't afford the really high price tag. How
Hmm.
you work out the mechanics of that, I have no idea, but obviously people have figured that out, so it seems like a solved problem. Yeah,
Yes,
so
there's one school I'm thinking of in particular that. They charge tuition based on the household income,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
There's like a percentage.
And that's in a way that's closer to value pricing than setting a fixed price and then kind of discounting for with financial aid or whatever. But yeah, and then the last thing that's kind of on my mind, there's something about the monthly subscription or the monthly model that I don't like. I understand that it aligns with how people usually get paid, and therefore it probably makes it more affordable in a cash flow sense. But it projects a lack of commitment, that I don't love. So if the parent is paying monthly, it stands to reason that they could pull a kid out in the middle of a school year or whatever, like an arc. Is this something that would have arcs like a traditional school year, or does it kind of not matter? Like, and the other thing with the monthly, here's the behavior that I don't like, and you'd need to address this somehow, is parents
Mm.
dropping in and out of it. So like, oh, we're going to go on vacation for 2 months, so we're not going to pay you for the next 2 months, but we'll be back in September. Like that seems really disruptive to me. If it's not disruptive, then fine, but it feels disruptive, and I
And
wouldn't want to
it
encourage that.
it is. I haven't figured out an alternative for it other than like, for example, on that listing that I sent you, when there's like different holidays, I say those holidays are optional because the person that we hire would still be available during
Hmm.
those holidays because not every family recognizes that as a holiday,
Sure.
for cultural reasons or whatever. And I want to respect that. So
Yeah.
um,
I just
if it
think
was go
I,
ahead.
I just think, I think the approach is an annual. It's like, look, if you want to go on vacation, fine, but that doesn't change the amount of money you're paying for the year. It's just like with a private
You're
school.
Yeah.
you know, and then
You're
you
still
get,
going to be practicing as a parent while you're on vacation, and maybe something's going to hit the fan and you might need to call
hmm
us and like get
right.
some guidance.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
feeling pretty strongly about not using a monthly payment model. Um, I know that complicates things, but your your addressable your capacity is so low, you know, 6 families, that you want to you want people that are committed to it, like committed to the thing, and aren't like, oh well, and not even thinking. You want them to be not thinking about the money. That's the other thing. You don't want every month like, here comes this $3,000 bill, or here comes this $1,000 bill again. Geez, that's more than our health insurance. I don't know if this is really working, you know. And you in the first 2 months they like chicken out because they haven't fully
Mm,
onboarded, they haven't fully got the
that
benefit
is
because they
true.
haven't fully committed. I feel like it really should be an annual fee. And if they choose not to show up for 2 weeks because they went to Paris, okay, well, you know, that's fine.
You
Like,
still get these benefits, or you can still meet up virtually if you want to pop it or whatever.
yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, I don't really know. I have a question about annual then. Is
Mm-hmm.
that an 100% paying for the year up front? Or is that someone coughing up $100,000 up front?
Well, let me turn
Or,
it around and say, why not do that?
well, if they could, then great.
Yeah. So find
I
people that can.
imagine that I imagine that even the people that can would they ask for a different option, and should I offer it?
Um, the other options, I think you've already listed other good options, which is this sort of remote version where nobody's traveling around. Maybe it's a bigger cohort, maybe it's multiple cohorts. But the sort of resistance that you're feeling to imagining someone dropping 100 grand up front, there's a lot of ways to deal with that. So there's a couple of factors. One is that you're afraid. It sounds like from what you just said, you're afraid they're not going to trust you. Like, what if you just disappear with our money, kind of thing. So you do have to address that problem. How are they going to trust that you're the real deal? Like, that you're not a flake and you're not going to take off, and, you know, and that's just a trust building exercise. So if it's a small community thing and it's word of mouth, and you've got a good track record in the community, you know, whatever, you're active in some church or something and everybody knows you, it's going to be easier to to you know, clear that hurdle. The other way is to lower the price so that the risk doesn't seem as severe. So maybe it's $50,000 a year. Maybe there's a pioneer program where, you know, the first year pioneers of, you know, the village, they, you know, get this one time $50,000 a year or $30,000 a year, whatever it is. And then they're like, yeah, they're bought in on the concept. They believe in the worldview. So imagine, let me paint a picture for you. Let's say you go on sort of a podcasting tour, PR. You try and do a lot of PR where you beat this drum about the mission to break the chain of emotional abuse. And here's how you do it. And we look like, I don't want to say daycare. We look like a traditional private nanny, or we look like, you might compare us to a private part-time preschool, but that's not what we are. There's a component of kids in a room with adults there, but this is more about modeling good parenting for parents who have never had that modeled, right? So you go around and you're talking about this, it's resonating with people, and you end up on NPR, then you're going to have zero problems selling this, right? Because you've got a mission and it's going to resonate. It might not resonate with anybody. I feel like it will, though. So it resonates with some people, and you become like educator to the stars. And you know what I mean? Then
Yeah.
they're going to not think twice about it because they trust you because of the third party validation and the social proof. So right now it feels impossible, probably feels impossible to imagine 6 people coughing up 100 grand, but that's because they don't know you yet. You're not famous yet. If you were famous, it'd be no problem.
I think it doesn't feel impossible to find the people that can, because if I met 6 people in these different, neighborhoods that I just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be an issue of finding the people that can. I feel like what I'm ill-equipped with is to be able to do the role playing like pushback stuff where if they give me pushback or something, even though they can, how me not being experienced in being able to what to say, where to stand, what energy to
What
give.
kind of pushback?
Like if we role played right now, if I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is going to cost 100,000 a year or
Mm-hmm.
150,000 a year. You can go and hire, I have a great alternative nanny agency if you'd rather prefer a private nanny for full-time care, because that's what you want. You
Well,
want
see,
full-time care.
you're already talking me out of it. You didn't.
What?
So if we're role playing,
I was
just say the
no, I
first
was
part.
about to say, but that's not what I'm selling. Like that's not going to save you the dysfunction.
No, 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 no.
It's
I
not
know,
gonna,
I know, but
yeah.
leave some more
Okay.
space in there, right? So,
Okay.
so I'll say, well, how this program sounds really interesting. How much is it?
It's $100,000 a year.
Stop. Yes, exactly. Stop there. Like $100,000, I could get a full-time nanny for that.
Yeah, you could.
Perfect. Exactly. Exactly.
I watched your thing, so I
Yeah, that's
I watched
exactly
your
it.
interview with Christo.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Go ahead. If that's what you want,
Yeah.
that's not what we are. So it's as simple as that, honestly. So
Okay.
if they came to you, so if you're getting inbound leads and you're not cold
Mm-hmm.
calling people and knocking on doors, but if your name is out there and people are coming to you, they believe that you have something for them because they aren't going to waste their time talking to someone who they don't believe could maybe improve their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So you know already that they are considering it. They could be misunderstanding what it is, in which case you need to improve your marketing, make it more clear, increase the clarity,
Mm-hmm.
and then clarify with them on the meeting what actually is involved. And then when they get to the point where honestly, I just put the price tag on the website, and then no one will even call you unless they think that's something they can afford. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
you put the price on the website, it's $100,000 a year, and I don't know what you would call it, financial aid available or whatever. And then so like high net worth individuals are not going to want to say, oh yeah, we got financial aid to put our kid in this unicorn program. They're just going to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about, I think the bigger thing is, there's a whole bunch of steps still, like proving the model, running it a couple times, make sure that there's nothing is ever, no plan survives contact with the enemy. There's going to be lots of surprises. But if you get over that and you get over those hurdles and you not perfect, but create like a well-oiled machine, you've got a good process, you're really happy with it, you make some tweaks, you're getting great testimonials, and the kids are the kids theoretically, once you sell 6 families, theoretically they're going to be in it for 3 years, 4 years, right?
Yeah, until the kids are old enough where, like, if the parents are that unschooling, homeschooling type of family, and they're like, okay, our kids are like 8 now. Now they want to go and travel the world and do world schooling and like go see the Wall of China and not learn about it in a book. Now it's time to like leave the co-op for a year because we want to spend a year in China.
Right. Right. So,
in the beginning, the kids don't really want to do that when they're under age 6. They're like, oh, I want my friends and I want, they want to be home.
And toys, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Where was I going with that though? So as you're building up your reputation, you'd be able to increase the tuition every year. And the more we talk about it, the more I like the annual tuition and not like a monthly payment. And ideally what would end up happening is that you'd start getting a waiting list, and then you'd have options. You're like, well, do I take one of my current lead facilitators and he or she starts a new location, in 100 miles away or 60 miles away, near a wealthier community or something. And, basically you'll have some demand. You'll be able to follow the demand and say like, okay, how could we address this demand? Or maybe you create new products and services like remote learning pods or courses, or branch off and do more specific targeted things that are just for the parents or people who don't have kids yet and are afraid to have kids because they had such a horrible upbringing. So maybe you've got additional things that you can begin to offer once you see a demonstrated demand. But the core piece of I think I think the core piece of any of this working is focusing way more on the mission, the change that you want to make, the difference you want to make in the world, and way less on the money. Because when we talked earlier and when in the earlier part of this conversation, there was a lot of a lot of like hourly rates were mentioned, and it's the wrong thing to talk about. It's the wrong thing to think about. It's more like, think about what's the big picture mission, be talking about that to anybody who'll listen, and just forget and fund the mission somehow, without running the numbers too hard or being like, oh, I want to get down to 4 hours per week. I actually think it would be easier if you thought about the money less and the mission more, and set your prices high enough that you had the resilience to figure things out throughout the first year with real live families and run the model and then perfect it.
Okay.
It's not going to be easy, but no one said it would be. If you want easy, just sell vitamin supplements online.
Well, if I wanted easy, I would just enroll my child in a school that
Public
I
school,
wanted
right?
a third. Yeah. But again, that's not easy because the relationship and then the therapy and the decades of suffering.
Well, it's the long-term versus short-term worldview.
Yeah.
So you're taking a very long view, which is great.
Yeah.
Cool. Unfortunately, I have to wrap up.
No, it's great.
But hopefully this has been helpful. It's been super interesting to me.
Cool. Yeah, it has been. I think getting clear on the yearly thing versus the monthly thing will kind of safeguard and provide a lot more resilience versus the monthly. I think you had a really good point about that.
Cool.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing?
Well, I have an Instagram page. It's at Kristina Rio, actually. It's KRISTINARIO_. Soon there will be a website up for Harmony Family Network. It's going to be the name of the co-op.
Love it. That's great.
So right now we're on Winter School, but the website will be up soon, harmonyfamilynetwork.com.
Great.
And that's how people would be able to find this in its first forms.
Excellent. Well, dear listener, if you are in the Long Beach area, or if you know someone who is, or if you've got suggestions or feedback or anything like that, that's where you can find Kristina. And that'll do it for this time around. I'm Jonathan Stark, and you've been listening to Ditching Hourly. Bye.